A CIA agent's first mission before joining the force, a hidden canister of film that could free a people, and one young woman's journey to find her life purpose. Welcome to Season 1, Episode 2 of Nonfiction Friday, the new series that shares unbelievable stories that really happened. In today's episode, we're talking about the early story of Amaryllis Fox, a former CIA agent and now author, and how she got involved in a political protest that would change her life forever. It's 1998, and Amaryllis is just finishing high school. She misses the day where they get to choose their end-of-year project, and is therefore assigned by her teacher to cover the unrest in Burma. This project would teach her about a woman making a huge difference and huge statements in a certain corner of the world, so far from where Amaryllis was. That woman was Aung San Suu Kyi. She sees all that this woman is doing, and she wants to be called in the same way that this woman is called to do something, and she starts wondering what her life will be. She applies to colleges and gets into Oxford, but she decides to defer her studies for a year, opting to do a volunteer trip at the Burmese border. She took her prom dress money and used it for a plane ticket to Thailand. When she arrives, she starts acclimating to camp life and is learning about the lives around her. She writes a few pieces about refugee life and actually manages to get a few of them published. As her interest in writing and her interest in documenting the circumstances around her increases, she starts to take interest in another local writer named Min. Min was a teenager during the 8/8/88 protests. As a result, his name became a mark on a military target list, and he had to go into hiding. 9 years of hiding later, he escaped into Thailand, but he still felt passionate about all they had been fighting for. So somewhere along the Thailand border, he found a mimeograph machine and some like-minded activists, and together they would write and publish a democratic newspaper. Amaryllis sees this man, and she wants to write a profile about his work, so she musters up the courage to approach him. She asks him if she can write about him, and he very kindly says yes and offers to show her his newspaper in operation. But getting there is no simple task and requires a great deal of trust. She is blindfolded, put on the back of his motorbike, and as they're going along, she can start to sense that they are joining the jungle because of the sounds and the smells. Finally, they arrive. He takes off her blindfold, and they are both absolutely covered in red mud. They are deep under the jungle canopy, and suddenly they walk up to a ladder. The ladder leads to a bamboo platform, and as Amaryllis climbs up and peeks inside, she finds a simple, bare-bones room filled with typewriters, ashtrays, and tons of books, just everywhere in this treehouse in the middle of the jungle, where a resistance is writing papers to distribute for their cause. She meets the few activists who work with Min to write this paper, and she becomes a regular. She becomes one of them, and she alternates her time between camp life and helping them. What they're working on now is a new protest, similar to the 8/8/88 protests. This time, they want to do a 9/9/99 protest. These are the dates, by the way. But even spreading the word about this protest is tricky, and the group actually makes stamps from potatoes to stamp the date onto money that will be distributed across the border. The group knows that they cannot make the same mistake that the 88 protest made, which was that no documentation was created. No one took photos, no one filmed what was happening, so the world at large was able to ignore and avoid, instead of having to be confronted with the visual of what was going on there. Everyone seems to look at Amaryllis, and Amaryllis knows that this is her time and it's her chance, and she feels called to do it. She doesn't hesitate. She says, yes, I'll do it. I'll volunteer to make sure that this happens, that we have some sort of evidence that we can get out and broadcast. But this in itself is very tricky. You cannot get into Burma without a business visa. Now, since Amaryllis doesn't have a business visa, and certainly none of these rogue journalists who are likely on military lists don't have one either, but Amaryllis has an idea. She starts remembering this acquaintance she had. She met him once, and they only talked for an hour, but he is a 30-something investment banker, and because he feels guilt about his company's role in the activities in Burma, but he can't afford to quit his job, he volunteers his amateur filmmaking as a way to, I guess, balance out what he's doing so that he can try to help in some way. Now, she doesn't really know this guy, and he doesn't really know her, but she decides to try it. So at a payphone at the edge of the jungle, in the middle of nowhere, she calls this guy. He answers, and she simply says, "How would you like to take a 2-week vacation from work, fly to Thailand, pretend to be married, so we can get into Burma on your business visa and record what's happening there. And strangely enough, he says yes. The treehouse crew gets to work immediately. They start doctoring satchels so that they can film while riding bikes, and they prepare Bic pens so that they can hide the film inside when they're trying to leave the country with the evidence. They even get a fake marriage license for this young couple. And when he arrives, they waste absolutely no time. They go straight to the embassy to try to get their visa paperwork sorted. And even while they're there, they're putting on this show as if they're newlyweds, and she's annoyed because their honeymoon is his business trip. It's like a whole thing that they're putting on because the nature of this undercover project that they're doing has to start now. So the paperwork is taken care of. They get on a plane, they arrive in Burma, and then they face the immigration desk. And this charade of them being married has to be perfect. The man at the desk asks them if they are married. They, of course, say yes. He writes down all their information, takes their passports, and finally, when they think they're about to leave, he doesn't give their passports back. He takes them and he puts them in a folder. It's understood that they are not allowed to have their passports, which is their only way out of a country, until this guy gives them back. They play it off like it's no big deal, and they are given a guide, a tour guide, who is really a minder that will be with them the entirety of their trip. They will be constantly watched as they wait for the protest to start on the 9th. They have to familiarize themselves with the area where the protest will be held, and all the while pretending to be newlyweds, these two basic strangers, barely acquaintances, all while being monitored 24/7. Not to mention, this girl is just out of high school. I mean, it's crazy and amazing that they were able to pull this off. There's a little cafe in the area called ABC Cafe where they can communicate or get messages back to the treehouse crew, and the way they do that is by taping them inside the toilet. So they'll go to the cafe, and then one of them will go to the bathroom, and they will write notes, slip them under the toilet, and that is how they communicate back and forth. The first time they visit the cafe, she goes to make sure the system works. She checks underneath the toilet, and there is a folded piece of paper. The outside has an amaryllis flower, which is her name, and on the inside it says, "Order the French fries." So they know they have this line of communication ready to go. But it is the only way they can communicate. Amaryllis and her friend are basically alone in this, and so much is riding on them being successful. Meanwhile, the resistance has to make sure that the protest can actually go through. So many different pieces have to fit together for this to work, and they're just hoping that they have the chance to play their part. The day before the protest, they are all ready to go. They've scoped everything out. They head to the ABC Cafe and notice that it's closed. And it's sort of a first warning sign that things might not be going as they are planned. So they wait, and they wait, and they wait. Nothing happens. There's no protest. They check back again the next day. The cafe is open, and they quickly and discreetly as possible, one of them goes to the bathroom to check. Inside is a piece of paper that says the protest was over before it even started. And they can't help but feel that all these months of planning is wasted. But the treehouse group still thinks that there's a way they can make this trip and this huge risk that Amaryllis has taken, they can make it worthwhile. Suu Kyi, the woman who inspired Amaryllis to actually go to this place and do what she could to make change there, that very woman wants to meet her. This in itself is another level of danger. Suu Kyi is essentially on house arrest. She cannot leave her home, and the only other place she can go is her headquarters. So they have to pretend as newlywed couples that they're just going to see Suu Kyi, and when they get there, it's guarded, it's just a very intimidating situation. But they do arrive, and there's no problems getting in, and everything seems to be going really well. Suu Kyi asks them to interview her, record it, smuggle it out, and have it broadcast on shortwave so that people can hear her message and the resistance can be strengthened and hopefully move forward. So they do this. They interview her. And once the interview is over, they start taking apart the film, getting the Bic pens and starting to wind it up to hide it within the pin itself. But as Amaryllis is doing this, Suu Kyi puts her hand on hers and stops her. Suu Kyi looks at her and says, "Those are fine for the decoy film, the scraps you want them to find so they think they've gotten it all. For the real footage, the footage you actually want to get out, nature has given you a better hiding place. The bathroom is down the hall." And so, the film is hidden. Amaryllis and her friend get ready to leave. As you can imagine, leaving is the hardest part. And as they exit the building, none of the guards stop them. Everything seems fine. They go to the road and they see a taxi. They start to call for it, when suddenly a truck pulls up and stops next to them. It's a military truck, and a man with a gun tells them to get in. They are taken to their hotel, where they are told to get their belongings, and men escort them to their room, rummage through their things, take all the cash they can find, calling it an exit tax. They are escorted back to the truck with their belongings. They hope against hope that they are just being taken to the airport and essentially just being told to leave. But after quite some time in this truck, the canvas flaps are pulled back to reveal something quite different. They're at some sort of hangar with razor wire around the perimeter. There is a van next to their truck where a man that is blindfolded and bound is being led into this building, and they are pushed to follow. Amaryllis is asking herself, what is this place, and will I ever leave it? Inside there are adult officers, child soldiers with guns with bayonets taller than they are, other prisoners, and the occasional cry of pain from a door leading to a section beyond. Hours pass, and soon they are walking beyond that door where they heard all those screams and cries of pain. She's taken to a room with nothing in it except for a pot and a chair. It's here she's left for what feels like days. There is nothing to do, nothing to think about except the situation she's in. Nothing to read, nothing to look at, nothing to listen to, other than the sounds of people in pain. Finally, the door to her room is opened. To her immense relief, she is escorted out, where she meets her friend, who she is so relieved to see. They are given some of their belongings back. The satchels with the hidden cameras have been destroyed, as have the Bic pens that were supposed to hide the film. They are escorted from the building, taken to the airport, given their passports back, and Amaryllis leaves that country, knowing that the film lies hidden inside of her, knowing that today they didn't win. She did. The resistance did. If you are curious about Amaryllis and the rest of her story, again, this happened before she was even in the CIA. She shares this and so much more in her book, Life Undercover, Coming of Age in the CIA, a truly fantastic book, wonderfully written. It's the sort of thing that spy novels try to write, but can't seem to accomplish. It's vividly real, inspiring, encouraging, and gives you a lot of faith in so much that goes on outside of your worldview that serves to protect so many people. I encourage you to give it a read and learn the full story of not only this experience, but lots of other things that happen over Amaryllis's career. And finally, if you liked this video, give it a quick thumbs up, drop a comment below, and tune in next Friday for episode 3. The first season of Nonfiction Friday is experimental, so if you did like this, be sure to drop a comment letting me know so that I can decide if I want to start planning for a season 2. If you're new here and you haven't subscribed yet, go ahead, press that subscribe button, and I will see you on the next one. Thanks for watching. Bye, guys.